everybody. I hope you guys have had a wonderful weekend. It might have been a wet one, but prayerfully all of us are still safe and secure. Again, I know I've said this so many times before, but I do want to say again, at this time with lockdown and people losing their jobs and having a shortage of food and all kinds of things, I do want to encourage you again, if you're maybe in a situation where you do not have food, please speak to your discipling partner or family group leader, as we would love to help you, and we want to make sure that we take care of the church as a whole. Today, we are starting a series of conversations and sermons with regards to race, culture, and the church. Historically, I've always thought that money is the most difficult and controversial subject matter to speak about from the pulpit. Today, I certainly feel differently. As for many of you, it has been an intense couple of weeks for Lisa and myself as we've tried to wrestle through many things with regards to racism in our own hearts, inside of the church, and also in the world at large. We've had the opportunity to speak to several people from different races, cultures, and backgrounds in order to try and gain a better understanding as to what it is that people are feeling, experiencing, and seeing not only now, but in years that have gone by. Thus far, we have learned a lot, and our eyes have been opened in many, many ways, and we're incredibly grateful for these conversations that we could have had. We, in all honesty, don't exactly know where it is that we are going as a church and where God is taking it all, but we are going somewhere and including people in the conversation, and we feel incredibly hopeful for us as a church with regards to this matter. What I've realized about myself over the years, and you can maybe relate, with regards to many issues of character, is that it's almost like the peeling of an onion. In becoming a Christian, God definitely addressed many issues of race in my heart, of which I repented, but that repentance, early on repentance, was but one layer of the onion. Then I clearly remember, as a very young Christian, maybe a month old, they announced in church at a midweek service that a couple was dating. I was elated. The couple stood up. It was a white guy. It was a black sister. And I was like, huh? Do we do that? Another layer to be peeled, another layer to be removed, another layer for God to work on. And so the layers continued through the years. But very early on, I became friends with people from different races and cultures, and I've had some of the most amazing experiences in my life with these friends. The brutal murder of George Floyd, though, sparked another layer for me to peel, and I believe that is true not only for myself, but for many others, whether black, white, colored, or foreigners that are part of our fellowship. At this time, I believe all of us are standing at a crossroad where our response can either make us or break us as a church. In Hebrews 12, verse 11, the author says, "No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it." A harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. In other words, we need to allow God to do His work of discipline in us. I believe that the first step towards this end is to seek to understand each other. Proverbs chapter 20 verse 5 says that the purposes of man's heart are deep waters, but a man of understanding draws them out. This scripture was drilled into me as a young Christian, as I needed to understand people around me, my spouse, and everyone else for that matter that was different to me. We can only understand different races and cultures by asking questions of each other with the desire to gain a better perspective of the other person's story. And that's what we are going to do over the next 3 Sundays. Over the last couple of weeks, I've had a number of conversations with Themba Kulu, a trusted and dear friend, that has been extremely helpful in helping me to understand how many black people are feeling not only in this time, but in many years that have gone by. I wanted to include you guys in this conversation, and so I asked them in one of the conversations if we could maybe talk on Zoom and record it. We ended up speaking for over an hour, so we're going to divide our conversation into 2 parts of 30 minutes each. This Sunday we'll look at one part for 30 minutes, and the next Sunday we'll look at the one following. Now, for context, what you are going to be hearing might be new for you, but most of it was not new for me on this call because Themba and I have been speaking about this over the last couple of weeks. So, today and next Sunday, conversation with Themba Kulu to gain a better understanding or perspective from how black people are feeling. Then in 2 weeks' time, I'll be speaking to Alistair Kluter, again, another dear and trusted friend, to gain a better understanding of colored people's perspective. And maybe over time, I'll talk to myself in order to gain a better understanding of white people's perspective. Just a bit of background on Themba. Themba has been a disciple of Jesus for over 23 years, of which 18 of those years he served in a full-time ministry, and currently he leads the congregation in Tshwane. He's been married to Zama for 15 years and have a very lively 11-year-old boy called Luanle. But without further ado, here is my conversation with Themba. Hi everybody, I'm here with Themba Kulu, a trusted old friend of mine, and Themba, super excited to have you with us here on, we can call it a podcast if you may, or a Zoomcast, and excited to chat to you today about race, culture, and the church. So welcome, if you may, to Cape Town.
Thank you. It's exciting to be chatting to you about this topic, but also just to catch up. It's been a while that we haven't seen each other physically, and we talk a lot over the phone, but this certainly provides an exciting opportunity to talk about this, and what a cool topic to talk about.
Yeah, cool topic, but also certainly can be very controversial, and if navigated wrongly, can also be very hurtful to many people. And that's obviously why I initiated this discussion, for us to be able to talk about it. Themba, from your side and my side, I know we've been friends for a number of years. I don't even know how long, but I know I also asked you the other day if you can remember how we became friends. Can you still remember?
Of course, up until that time, I actually had not even thought much about it, and as we were discussing, I remember it very clearly, and so we kind of knew each other and knew of each other over the years, and I think when you moved up to Joburg, definitely that's when our friendship really began, and most of it really was just through you reaching out, and most of the time, I think, as I said to you, I was kind of reluctant, in our friendship, but you continued, you persisted, which I appreciate a lot, that you persisted through even that initial kind of reluctance from my part, and I think we had a number of appointments which again you set up, and life can be very busy in Joburg, but I appreciate how you consistently would just carve out time, like 2 hours of just sitting down, talking through different things, and just establishing that mutual understanding. In fact, I think it was pretty much like this. You were asking a lot of questions, and I was talking, and that's how our friendship began.
Well, Bud, you've obviously been a great friend to me over the last number of years, and also a great counselor on many things. And for our audience that might not know, we obviously speak fairly regularly on the phone, just talking either about life or about the church, the ministry, whatever it might be, our families. And obviously a couple of weeks ago, I then gave you a call, and I'll just sort of set this up as well as to how that went down. So I gave you a call with, I gave you, I gave you a call with an unexpected answer. Let's call it that. Certainly me being a white guy, I've been very oblivious to a lot of things. Okay, and with the whole George Floyd incident, also viewed that as an American situation. And in general, I don't like to follow the news too much because it leans towards being very negative. But then realize, sure, it certainly has a bigger influence than just in America. Let me give you a call and ask you, hey, how do I navigate this? I mean, I have no idea. Here are some thoughts that I have, but obviously would love to help the church navigate through some of these things. And then you said to me, the first thing, I don't know if you can remember this, but you most probably could, but the first thing you said to me was, okay, well, the first thing I need to ask myself is, where am I at on this?
Yeah.
Okay. What do I see? And do I see racism in my own heart? And I was like, say what? I was like, you talking to me? What are we friends? I have like a black friend, which I think is what many white people say. And then obviously I can ask you more questions, and you asked me about, okay, you spoke about either structural or systemic racism. How do I feel about it? Do I see it as an evil? And I'm like, an evil? I don't even know what it is. Let alone an evil. But I mean, that was certainly as we spoke afterwards, that was a massive conversation for me. Sitting, listening, and trying to hear and not be defensive. Okay. So in my heart of hearts, I had to really, luckily we weren't on Zoom or video, because otherwise you might have seen the blood run from my mouth as I was biting my tongue. And then you still said to me, I'm most probably not even, I'm just saying some things to you, not all things. And I'm thinking, oh my word, Lord help me. I'm trying to figure this out. I don't know how to do this. But that was certainly a turning point for me in thinking, sure, let me go and check my own heart. Sure, I don't mean to be racist or prejudiced or what have you. But what is it that I'm not seeing? And I obviously thought a lot about our conversation at that time, prayed a lot about it, got a book from Michael Burns about crossing the line, which sadly has been for many years, and I've not made the effort to read. I say embarrassingly so, and started not just reading it, but almost studying it as a textbook. That opened up my eyes to many things. Started having conversations, both Lisa and I, independently with different Black brothers and sisters around the issue. And it felt to me like obviously scales came off of my eyes, and I'm sure not at all completely, but certainly more. And obviously we continued conversation with that, which has been incredibly helpful for me. So that's obviously what has led us to this conversation. And then I thought again, man, sure, you've been so helpful to me in this. What if I can bring other people into the conversation, and that they can also learn some of the things that I learned? So all that you need to do in our brief time together is convince them in the same way as you've convinced me to see the darkness in their hearts. So let me start maybe with, like I said, this was new for me, the idea of systemic or structural racism. I didn't even know that as a concept. And again, that shows you, and I certainly do not represent all white people or Afrikaans-speaking white people. I can only speak for myself. But I do think that there's most probably a number of people, when they hear that word in the media, or even if we use it today, don't have, what am I talking about? What does that mean?
These conversations have been amazing. I have enjoyed our phone calls and just the deep conversations that we continue to have on many other topics, but even on this topic, and it was such a great sense of relief that we can have this conversation, and we were having it almost the same way as we've had many other conversations we've had about leadership, about personal development and growth, about the church and the spiritual upliftment of the church, and how I wish that many other people can have the same opportunity that we have. And the beauty of God's church, that when we open our hearts and we are willing to learn from each other, with each other, that the platform is there. The platform has been created by God's church. Now, systemic racism, or systemic racism, or institutional racism, or structural racism refers to this world system that at its foundation really has the ideas of white superiority, and this is captured in day-to-day different transactions and different thinking, and it comes down to a system that is established, and this system, it operates within our society, and it's there to make sure that it secures and it promotes these white supremacy ideas through many different platforms. And so it's not a one-on-one sort of relationship or interaction and racism at that level, but this operates on a much bigger scale. I'll make an example of the product of systemic racism is, you look at South Africa, and there was a research done, and what then came back is that over 90% of their land is owned by white people, even though they make up around 10% of the population. So that just didn't happen on its own. Yeah. And it's like, well, we buying land here, and these guys just choose to eat their money and buy something else. It's a system that has been in place that led to that reality that we have to live through. So it's much bigger than you and me, or me and some other person, and how we relate to each other. And so that's one way, where one area where it plays out. But there's a much bigger idea that is to separate, is to take one race and put it above and suppress other races. So that's basically that.
And then obviously what I learned as well is that it can be done very subtly, or even for many of its participants unknowingly.
Yeah.
So in other words, it's not promoted from a podium of people saying oppress or white superior. Maybe there are strange people, and I won't go into that, but that I'm sure that does exist. It tends to be minority groups. Again, I might be off on that, but it's something completely different. What really helped me was you explaining Lwande's schooling to me. Can you maybe just share that, the idea of the school that he goes to historically? I don't know if you can remember this conversation, the school that he goes to, and then the teacher being white, I think, and then the principal definitely being white, and what effect that could have on a young boy if that's all that he sees around him.
Yeah, so, we put him in the school in our neighborhood. Of course, when we were deciding on a house to purchase, we were looking for, a good school, a good academic school in the area and in the neighborhood. And so we were basing our decision to buy a house on that. And so we then, came into this area, Queenswood, and there's a school around, which is Rittondale, and we enrolled him there. And, for the most part, we had a good time. He was enjoying himself, and we had a good relationship with this, grade 1 teacher. And we were very engaged and attending meetings, giving to the school and all of that. But we began to notice that in the school, so, the principal is white, the deputy principal is white, mainly the teachers are white. And then there were maybe 1 or 2 teachers that were black teachers. The board was predominantly white, even though the school was maybe at that time 70% black and colored and Indian, and maybe 30% white. And so, but then you had the teachers that were at aftercare. Those were predominantly black. The people who were working, the groundsmen at the school were black. The cleaning staff was black, and there were some incidents that were taking place where he was also starting to see that there are some things that because he came from sort of being a child that grew up in the church, everybody's the same, and but when he was at school, he was feeling this tension that exists. But we then decided, no, this is not the environment even though this is a good school academically, we didn't want him growing up having that relationship with authority. That, you know, the authority, the people that occupy positions of authority are white people, and black people and colored people and Indian people kind of, you know, are down the ranks. And so we started looking for a school and praying, and we found this school, which was not far from also our neighborhood, a little bit of a longer drive, but it's a very mixed school. The principal is a lady, and she's black. There's a staff complement of you know, both black, white, colored teachers, and so that was very helpful for us. And we thought, man, this sort of paints a more realistic picture of what we want him to grow up with.
Right. And I know that was very eye-opening for me hearing that, because again, that's something very subtle and not necessarily even intentional, okay, from the school side. Again, I don't know the school, I don't know what their plan is, but I thought about it in that conversation that obviously if Luande grows up and subconsciously all that he sees is that positions of authority are white positions, then then he might start seeing himself as inferior. And then he sees, like you said, the ground workers, school ground workers are black, authority is white. And then you go to a place and the security at the shop is black, and the people on the till are maybe black or colored, and the manager is white. Okay.
Yeah.
And obviously what that creates, again, intentionally or unintentionally, is it creates a feeling of inferiority. And I know I have had discussions with different brothers on this side, and that came up a lot, where black brothers or people feel or sisters or ladies feel inferior, which obviously for me, I can completely understand after they said it. Before it was a shock for me when I heard it.
Yeah.
And embarrassed in the same process, because I feel like, sure, that should not be happening. And that should definitely not be happening in the church. Okay. And I was not aware that it was happening. And what made me feel even more embarrassed was the fact that I wasn't aware that it was happening. That is what I sort of learned from that process, is there's a whole lot of that going on. And once it's a little bit like that idea of, you want to buy a particular car and then you see it everywhere. You say, okay, I want to buy a Polo, and now you just see Polos everywhere. And since we've had that conversation, I have seen I've seen that a lot more.
Yeah.
Okay, Temba, my next question here is with regards to racism. Where have you even recently experienced racism outside of the church?
Yeah, so I think there's two things. So there'll be the personal experience of it, and then there's the world around us, kind of experience of it. So I think personally, you know, moving into Pretoria now, I have constantly experienced racism from the moment I became aware that this is a thing. There has been different times that I'm experiencing it, but certainly, you know, moving to Pretoria was definitely, it felt like there were more incidents that I was personally experiencing of you know, either, you know, driving on the road, you know, the one incident where I'm driving and I'm sort of uncertain about, you know, how to get to where I'm going, and you know, an intersection is approaching, but the GPS is not telling me I need to turn, and by the time it tells me I need to turn right, I'm on the wrong lane. And then I then, you know, try to still indicate and hope that, you know, someone else would be gracious and let me go through. But this guy, you know, just, you know, comes around, you know, starts swearing at me, and you know, he calls me a kefir, and you know, I'm thinking, man, you know, sure, I made a mistake, and I was waiting to see if someone gives me a gap. But you know, the incident lasted maybe a couple of seconds. But my wife and I, for the rest of that journey, it had really affected us. I mean, it was just like, what in the world? I mean, what year is this? Where are we? So that's sort of sort of a jarring incident that that happens. But then there's other subtle things like, at a local hardware store. I've been doing some renovations, and I go to the store quite a lot. I'm told, okay, I need to go to this place. There's a security officer there, and he will load some stuff for me, or a gas cylinder, and I pull up there, and the guy, looks at me. I mean, I've seen him loading stuff for other people, and it's a white guy who's at the control center there. The moment I pull up, he tells me, hey, you go over there and you take whatever you need. And so, I stop and I say, well, I was told you would load this for me. And, but, he just has this look of disbelief, like, why would I want to do that? And, but, it's, so I've had a variety of experiences, and I think I've also just reached a place where I think they don't affect me as much as they used to in the beginning. But it's certainly something that that happens all the time.
And how did it affect you in the beginning? Okay, in terms of, and I ask this because I can, and I'm speaking out of ignorance here. Okay, so I'm not completely off, but I can imagine that one of the coping mechanisms of this would be to harden your heart towards it. Okay, in other words, sort of blank yourself off, because if I were to be listening to this all the time, if I let this go to my soul, it will destroy me. Okay, and there's a danger in allowing that to harden your heart and to become even insensitive to it. But let's say now talk about earlier times when these kind of things first started happening. I mean, someone was telling me the other day, I'll give you an example. Someone was telling me also a car incident. So it seems like, again, I want to be careful on what I say here, but it seems like some white people aren't the most patient drivers. It seems is what I pick up and possibly battle with road rage. But it was something similar where also a brother, can't remember the detail of where one had turned, but took a wrong turn, rightly, wrongly, does irrelevant. And the guy also hang out of this guy actually was in a convertible, and as in most of these stories, unfortunately, an Afrikaans guy, and then also shouted the K word. Okay.
Yeah.
And I know you use the word. I cannot even say that word. I feel it feels like the Lion King where they say Mufasa and the hyena goes. But then he was, I can't remember who was with him in the car, but one was the kids, and he obviously felt embarrassed. He felt demeaned. Okay. Yeah. And obviously, as he was sharing this with me and some brothers, I mean, my heart sank. And obviously, I struggled in my own heart with other issues, which is another podcast and sermon and whatever else against the offender here, the perpetrator.
Yeah.
But how have these things more historically affected you? How does it make you feel if you go there and suddenly you're the black guy and I pick up your own thing, or someone shouting derogatory words to you? What does it do to your soul?
Yeah. So
be honest. Don't be honest. Please.
Yeah.
Keep straight.
No, sure. I think it's something that I have to constantly learn, grow, and the more I educate myself, I find that the better I'm able to react. Now, it affects me pretty much the same way. I mean, I'm hurt. I feel, demeaned or humiliated or, whatever it is, the intended emotion. Now, there are times when I feel angry, and you know, the times when I respond with anger, momentarily it feels better. You know, but over time, unfortunately, you know, you cannot, you know, anger is anger. You know, you give full vent to your anger, over time you become an angry person, whether it was directed at the right thing or not. And then there are times when I'm filled with compassion, you know, where I look at a person and I'm like, man, you know, if only they knew, they would not, they would have a different response. But I see them as a victim as well. And so, you know, it's harder to be able to have that realization and to have that compassion on people. And then there are times when it's subtle, and I'm just having a good day, and I'm able to just overlook it. So I've had a mixed bag of reactions, and sometimes I don't even know how I'm going to react the next time something happens. And you know, just as I think, you know, for example, moving to Pretoria, initially that brought a lot of anger and emotion.
Sure, I can imagine.
But over time, I realized, man, I have to rise up because it's going to happen. So I would prepare myself mentally that you know, I will be called the kefa. And so whether
you said it again.
Yeah, you know, whether I like it or I don't like it, or I'm in charge and I'm in control of how I respond.
Yeah, sure.
You know, I was maybe about 14 years old, and at our high school, there was this guy that had a hump on his back, and he was working in town in Vereeniging, and over weekends. And one of the weekends, he basically finished late at work, and on his way trying to go catch transport to come back, he met a group of bikers. Now we used to call them ducktails. I don't know why they're called ducktails, but every biker, you know, was called the ducktail. But they beat this guy up so bad, they murdered him. And what we were told at school was that they, you know, it's like they beat him up so bad they flattened his hump. Sure. And this was told to us at assembly at school. And I just remember, you know, just being filled with this deep sense of sadness, and you know, just these emotions that I had no idea how to deal with them. Now, as an adult, as these incidents were sort of happening, and I'm meeting these aggressive people who, you know, either is over a parking spot or over an incident at the traffic, or whatever the case may be, those deep emotions of sadness, and then followed by anger would resurface. But I think the more I have taken the time to study, to understand what it is that we are dealing with, I realized that many of those people are also victims of the same enemy that we are fighting. Yeah.
Well, but I've certainly appreciated your attitude and these things where I have often thought that I won't be able to navigate it that way. In other words, if I was sitting on the, if we were to switch colors here, if we were to switch colors here, I honestly think that it would have, maybe have been tempted beyond what I could bear. And maybe that's how I ended up white. I mean, it's so yeah. I'm not joking about it, but I'm honest. It's some of that to me would have been incredibly hard. I mean, I hope that has been as helpful and heart-wrenching to you as it has been to me, not only in that conversation, but in many that have gone by. Next week, we'll continue the conversation with Themba, or I'll continue the conversation with Themba, primarily talking about two things. One, where and how has he experienced racism inside of the church? And by that I mean inside of the ICOC, inside of the International Churches of Christ. And two, what would black people want people to know? So in other words, if a black person has an opportunity to say, here's what I would like white people to know, what would that be? I also do want to encourage every member, if you can, to buy Michael Burns' book entitled Crossing the Line, Culture, Race, and the Kingdom. It has been super helpful for me, and I think could be helpful to you as well. We have about 50 copies available from the church office, and you can also get it on Amazon Kindle. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Alistair Kluter, who will be leading our thoughts on the Lord's Supper.